So, are the US and China really heading into a new Cold War? It feels like that's the question on everyone's mind these days. But here's the thing, to have any hope of understanding where this is all going, you've got to look back at where it's all come from. So, let's dig in.
To really get what's happening in the headlines today, we need to look back. And I'm not just talking a few years, we're talking centuries. You see, this modern rivalry isn't happening in a vacuum. It's built on this incredible foundation of ancient orders, historical grievances, and two totally different visions for the world. It's time to connect the dots.
Okay, so our story starts way, way back, long before the United States was a world power. We're in East Asia, where for centuries the rules of the game were pretty much set, and the worldview was crystal clear. Take a look at this map. It really shows you how people saw the world back then. Right there, smack in the middle, is China, the Middle Kingdom. It's literally at the center of all under heaven. And you have to understand, this wasn't just about geography. No, this was a deeply ingrained belief about who was at the center of civilization itself and who held all the power. And this worldview created a very clear pecking order. Yeah, China at the top, of course. Then you had neighbors like Korea and Vietnam. They were what you'd call tributary states. Basically, they'd formally acknowledged China was the top dog, and in return, they got trade and security. Now, Japan. Japan was always a bit of a special case. They engaged with the system, sure, but they never fully bent to it, always kind of charting their own independent course. So what was the glue holding this whole thing together? In a word, Confucianism. Think of it like the region's cultural operating system. It was this shared set of values about how to run a government, how society should work, even how to conduct diplomacy. Everybody understood it. It was the common language of power. But this ancient, stable order, well, it was about to be completely shattered. The 19th century brought forces that would just blow the whole thing up, destabilizing the entire region and setting it on a new and much more violent path. You had the region being pulled in two completely opposite directions. On one hand, China, the traditional center of power, was getting hammered. They were defeated by Western powers in the Opium Wars and crippled by massive rebellions from within. At the very same time, Japan was going the other way. They launched the Meiji Restoration, this period of super fast modernization, and transformed themselves from an isolated nation into a major imperial power. The result of all this was a completely shattered order. The old China-centered world was just gone. And what happens when a system like that collapses? You get a massive power vacuum. And that vacuum was about to be filled by some incredibly fierce competition. Japan moved aggressively to fill that vacuum and create its own empire. They called it the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, which sounds nice, but it was really just a cover for brutal colonization and conquest. It started with Korea and eventually led to a full-scale war with China. And the historical wounds from this era, they have absolutely never fully healed. Okay, so fast forward through the absolute devastation of World War II. A whole new global order starts to emerge, and with it comes a brand new conflict that would once again completely reshape East Asia, the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. The end of World War II left another power vacuum. Japan was defeated and occupied. China's long civil war ended with a communist victory in 1949, and Korea was split right in two. And into this totally chaotic scene steps a new stabilizer, the United States, which all of a sudden became the dominant military power in the Pacific. And it didn't take long for this new Cold War to turn hot. The first major clash erupted in Korea in 1950. The Soviet-backed North invaded the South, and that kicked off a chain reaction that would define the region for decades to come. The United States jumped in fast, leading a UN intervention. But they didn't just repel the invasion, they pushed back hard, driving North Korean forces all the way up the peninsula, right to the Chinese border. Well, for Mao's new communist government in China, that was a step too far. They saw it as a direct threat and sent hundreds of thousands of troops pouring across the border. The war ended in a brutal stalemate, but the result was undeniable. The US and China were now locked in direct, bitter opposition. But then, in one of the most stunning plot twists in modern history, the 1970s brought a thaw. Why? Well, it's a classic case of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Both the US and China were deeply worried about the Soviet Union. So, President Nixon made his historic visit in 1972, shattering decades of hostility and kicking off a brand new era of strategic cooperation.
And this opening to the West, combined with some massive reforms inside China, unleashed one of the most explosive economic transformations the world has ever seen. Seriously. But the real rocket fuel was China's entry into the World Trade Organization in 2001. Its economy just went into hyperdrive. This incredible new wealth funded a massive military modernization. And as China became the world's factory, the stage was officially set for the direct economic competition we're seeing today. And China didn't just get rich, it went global. Through its massive Belt and Road Infrastructure project and huge investments in Africa and Latin America, China began to build its own network of influence, cementing its status as a true superpower contender. Which brings us right up to today. All of this history, the memory of being the center, the humiliation of the 19th century, the Cold War, and that unbelievable rise, it all shapes the current landscape of competition. So this modern rivalry isn't about just one thing. It's a multi-front competition. It's really playing out across 4 key areas, and each one has its own flashpoints. First, you've got economy and tech. This is a battle over everything from trade and intellectual property to who's going to control the future of AI and 5G. Then there's geopolitics. This is about flashpoints like the South China Sea and the razor's edge issue of Taiwan. Third, you've got the contest for global influence as each country tries to build its own team of allies. And running through it all is that deep ideological divide, a clash between democracy and authoritarianism. Okay, so after tracing this long, complex history, let's circle all the way back to our original question. Can we really say we're in a new Cold War? Is history just repeating itself? This entire historical arc is just so crucial. We've gone from a China-centered world to a shattered order to a US-led system after World War II. And now we're in a whole new era where that leadership is being directly contested. This history is the lens through which you have to view today's competition. And this leads us to the fundamental question. Are we just watching a simple replay of the 20th century, a return to rigid ideological blocks? Or is this something entirely different, a new unprecedented kind of rivalry between 2 powers that are economically tangled up like never before, yet locked in a struggle for the future, all while facing shared global threats like climate change? Answering that, well, that's the great geopolitical challenge of our time.